Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Awakens Hidden Bloodline during the fight with Mizuki Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A small blonde boy stared up into the cold, hateful eyes of his sensei. He couldn't move as his entire world was crashing down around him. He now knew why the village hated him. He now knew why they would beat him or kick him out of stores. It was because he was the nine-tailed fox in a human body. Mizuki smirked. That was easier than I thought it would be. You should give up now, brat, he yelled. No one ever cared for you, so just die so I can take the forbidden scroll. And take it to my master. Naruto Uzumaki looked up with tears dripping from his eyes as Mizuki pulled one of his large shuriken off of his back and threw it. Naruto just closed his eyes, glad that the suffering was going to end. He opened his eyes when no impact came. He saw his sensei and surrogate brother Iruka Umino with the large shuriken protruding from his back. Why, sensei? You should have just let me die. It's my fault that your parents are dead, he cried. Iruka just looked up and smiled before whispering, Naruto, you aren't the fox, you are the hero that stops it from killing more innocent people. With that Iruka fainted. Mizuki simply laughed before yelling, what a fool, now that he is out of the way I can get rid of you once and for. Demon. With this he pulled off his remaining shuriken before throwing it at the small boy. He was shocked when Naruto disappeared in a red flash, before appearing almost instantly on the other side of the small clearing with a feral snarl on his face. I am not a demon, he screamed at the top of his lungs before making a cross-hand sign. Shadow clone jutsu, he exclaimed as 200 Narutos suddenly appeared around him, a puff of smoke. How could he make so many shadow clones when this morning he couldn't even make one ordinary clone, thought Mizuki. Naruto suddenly yelled, Uzumaki flash barrage. As he finished saying this, all the clones started disappearing in red flashes and reappearing next to Mizuki, landing hit after hit until he was barely recognizable as human. Once Mizuki was taken care of, Naruto proceeded to faint. He awoke the next morning lying in a hospital bed with a Konoha Hitai forehead protector resting in his lap with a note from the Hokage on the bedside table. It read, Dear Naruto, I saw what happened last night with Mizuki. I am truly impressed by what you did, and the skills you have shown. Please come to my office as soon as you get this. I wish to tell you some important information regarding your parents and clan heritage. Signed, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage. Naruto quickly got up, looked around for his jumpsuit but found it was falling apart at the seams from the amount of stress put on the fabric while he was trying to learn the shadow clone jutsu. He quickly pulled it on and placed the Hitai on his forehead. He then looked in the mirror. Maybe I should get some different clothes seeing how I probably won't survive long as a ninja in orange clothing. He then screamed at the top of his lungs, cause I am gonna be the Hokage, believe it. Quote, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, sighed. Today he had to have a conversation with his favorite blonde knucklehead, a conversation he was hoping not to have until Naruto was at least Chunin. Getting up from his desk and walking over to the portraits on the wall. Well, Minato, your son has grown up so fast, already unlocking your bloodline, and learning AB ranked kinjutsu in an hour by himself. He said to the portrait of his blonde successor turned predecessor. I guess there's no hiding his heritage now, so I may as well give him his inheritance too. He channeled his chakra to a seal on the back of the portrait and watched as it slid away from the wall, revealing a safe with an intricate lock on it. Reaching into his Hokage robe, he pulled out a small scroll which clicked into place at the top of the lock, before slowly unraveling, revealing more seals which unlocked the safe. Inside was a sealing scroll, a jutsu scroll, a journal and a key with intricate seals carved into the metal. Line break. Naruto was amazed no one was staring at him. Usually when he walked down the main streets of Konoha, people would glare at him like he carried a disease. Now he realized they stared at him like he was a demon. These people wouldn't know the difference between a kunai and the scroll it was sealed in, he thought. He couldn't help but think he heard a giggle after he thought that. Who would have thought that a change of clothes would make people ignore him completely? Single quote. Naruto had simply transformed into a random genin from his class that was roughly the same size as himself and just walked into a store and bought new clothes. For once they were normal prices, not unbelievably high. He was now wearing black Anbu-style pants, blue ninja sandals, a gray shirt, and a black trenchcoat with a large black hood that covered his hair and left his face in shadow and an orange Uzumaki swirl on the back. His Hitai tied around his neck and poking out from the shadows. Right now he was walking into the Hokage Tower with a smile on his face, although no one could see it because of the hood. He walked up to the Hokage's office and was about to barge in when an idea for a prank came to mind. He walked up to the door and knocked before politely saying, "Hokage-sama, may I enter?" Hiruzen, not knowing who it was, seeing as he had cancelled all appointments today so that when Naruto showed up he wouldn't barge in and embarrass himself by yelling in front of a clan head or something, answer. D calmly. "Come in, but be quick, I have an appointment and I have to get some things ready." Naruto smirked, knowing that he was the appointment. It was at this point that Naruto kicked the door in and yelled, "Hurry up and give me the hat, old man." Sarutobi looked like he was going to have a heart attack, and all the hidden Anbu in the room were about to attack the intruder until he fell to the floor laughing, causing his hood to come off, revealing his spiky blonde hair and whisker marks. The look of shock on the Hokage's face turned into a small smile, knowing that Naruto was still himself, not some self-loathing child who believed his sensei when he was called a demon. Although his was shocked by the sudden change in clothing. When Naruto stopped laughing, he looked up at the Hokage and smiled his big cheesy grin before saying, "You wanted to talk to me, old man?" "Yes, I asked you to come here so that I could tell you about your family. I wasn't going to tell you this until you were older and stronger, but now that you have unlocked your father's bloodline and possibly your mother's, I have to explain so that you don't accidentally teleport into a wall. But first, why did you change your outfit? I thought that orange suited you." Quote, "Oh, that's simple," he replied. "I had an epiphany," supplied the Hokage. "Yeah, that," exclaimed Naruto. "I was thinking that when I wore orange I could hide from Anbu. Well, except Iruka-sensei, he could always find me, but if I wore black it would be so much harder to find me. And my jumpsuit kinda ripped apart," he added sheepishly while scratching the back of his neck. "Well, I should have expected that it was because he just plain broke it. Now, Naruto, it's time that I explained your bloodline limit. It is called the Flash Step. It is from the Namikaze clan, which was wiped out a long time ago. Your father was the last member and he decided to hide his bloodline by simply saying it was a jutsu. It can teleport you to anywhere you can see unless you find a way around that, like a marker seal attached to a kunai. The Flash Step is just wind chakra, moving every molecule of your body faster than the speed of light, whilst a second-natured chakra creates a flash to hide the deconstruction and reconstruction. Your secondary is fire, based on the color of your flash. Your father's was lightning, which caused a yellow flash. The Hokage put a lot of stress on yellow flash, hoping that Naruto would get the hint. He wasn't disappointed when Naruto suddenly looked to the portrait of the Yondaime, then over to a mirror on the opposite wall. "You mean," he said, hopeful. "Why is he pointed to himself then at the portrait multiple times?" The Hokage just nodded before saying, "Your father was my chosen successor, Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage." That little bombshell left Naruto stunned before he said in a small whisper, "Are you telling me that my own father sealed the most powerful demon in the world into his only son?" Hiruzen could only nod in sadness before saying, he couldn't ask another family to do what he wouldn't. "Now would you like to hear about your mother and her clan?" This caught the blonde's attention and turned his mood from sad to excited instantly. "Please tell me," was heard all through Konoha. The Hokage just smiled again before explaining, "Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the Red Death of Konoha. She was an Anbu captain and previous host of the Kyuubi. She died giving birth to you, making you the last of two clans. The Uzumaki clan were the leading clan of one of our allies, Uzushiogakure no Sato, the village hidden in the whirlpools. It was a ninja-only village with few civilians. The country was wiped out as well as the Uzumaki clan. You see, the Uzumakis were seal masters. They were the only people who used seals in battle other than exploding tags. They could beat any opponent with simply a brush and ink. This scared the other nations, which resulted in Kiri, Kumo, Iwa and a group of minor villages to attack Uzu. The Namakazes were the first there obviously, but they were wiped out at the same time. The Uzumakis had an unusual bloodline. Their chakra was different from other people. It allowed them to heal quicker as well as being able to combine elements together without the need for a bloodline. Naruto was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that he was from not just one but two clans. That meant he had to twice as good as Sasuke. Now Naruto, do you want this information to go public or do you want to wait? The blonde took a few moments to think before saying, wait a bit, we can tell everyone at a better time, like when I get promoted to Chunin. Hiruzen smiled as he too thought that would be the best time to tell the world. Hiruzen got up, grabbed a box off his desk and then sat back down with Naruto. This box contains your inheritance, Naruto. He gave the box to the hyperactive blonde and watched as he opened it. Tears welled up in Naruto's eyes as he saw the journal and the key. He looked up to the Hokage. The clan compound is next to the Hyuga estate. I will have an Anbu show you the way. The blonde smiled to his surrogate grandfather before getting up to leave. I'll see you soon, old man, said Naruto as he left with the Anbu. All the potential Junin sensei were sitting in the Hokage's office arguing over who would get who on their genin teams. The Hokage sat there rubbing his forehead. He could feel a migraine coming. Will you be quiet? Shouted the Hokage. The Junin all stopped talking immediately. Now let me get this right, every team but 7, 8 and 10 have been decided. When most of the Junin nodded in agreement, he continued, then the senseis of the completed teams may leave. Quote, they all filed out, leaving only the Hokage, Kurenai Uehi and Asuma Sarutobi. Kakashi is late again, was the thought running through all their minds. Yo, sorry I'm late, but I got lost on the road of life, said Kakashi as he walked through the door. The contents of the room were too annoyed to even bother calling him a liar. So what are your preferred genin? Asked the Hokage. Kakashi straight away said, I wish to train the last Uchiha, I don't care who else. If I have to, I will apprentice Sasuke and train only him. Well, if you have the Uchiha, we'll have to have Sakura, Haruno and Kiba Inuzuka, stated the Hokage. But Hokage-sama, I wish to have Kiba on my team. I will need him to complete my tracking and espionage team, objected Kurenai. Kurenai, I will admit that Kiba's nose would make him invaluable to your team, but I have someone who would be better, replied the Hokage. Oh, and who would that be? And what can they do? Replied Kurenai sarcastically. The Hokage just smiled before answering, well, he is probably the fastest genin in the village, can learn information from a distance and has enough chakra to perform several high-level jutsu in a row. So that if your team gets caught or surrounded, he can be the protector, and help your team escape quickly. How does that sound? You still didn't answer my first question, stated Kurenai. That's simple, it's Naruto, continued the Hokage. This caused Asuma and Kakashi to burst out laughing, and Kurenai had an angry look on her face. That's not funny, Hokage-sama. I wasn't joking when I said Naruto should be on your team. Just give him the teamwork test with Hinata and Shino, and then if he doesn't meet your standards, you can switch Naruto for Kiba. The entire time this was going on, Asuma just sat there, laughing in his head at the other two Junin, knowing that he would get the next generation of Ino Shikacho, and was guaranteed an easy ride as a sensei, a lazy genius who would rather watch clouds than train, a chubby powerhouse who will just eat, and a blonde fan girl who won't take training seriously. So all in all, Asuma was looking at some serious relaxing time instead of training. Awesome. Now that the teams are organized, make sure you are at the academy at 10 in 1 week's time, said the Hokage. Kakashi just disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing it had been a shadow clone. Kurenai left looking like she wanted to hit someone and Asuma just left with a smile on his face. The Hokage watched as they walked out. Once they were out of sight, he pulled out his pipe and little orange book before opening to his page and releasing a perverted giggle. Line break. Naruto sat in his new house reading his father's journal. He had explored the grounds when he first arrived and he was impressed. He had gone from living in an apartment that only had 3 rooms to a compound with over 10 different houses. He explored the full compound in the morning. It had about 15 different houses, each one with 5 bedrooms and fully furnished. There was what appeared to be a large park with playgrounds and sporting fields. A large fountain dominated the center of the compound. Directly opposite the gates that led into the compound was a large building with a hall, presumably for clan meetings, an armory containing special marker kunai and several short swords as well as 2 blood-red katana hung on the wall. There was also a library containing hundreds of jutsus and information about almost anything you can think of. Out the back of the compound was a large training field with seals on the fences and targets to prevent damage. When Naruto had finished his little tour, he had gone to the largest house on the grounds and went inside. He had found pictures of the Yondaime with a red-haired woman, who he could only assume was his mother. He had explored this house in detail and had found his father's study, and that was where he had stayed reading his father's journal and was trying to understand all the information on the flash step. When he finally thought that he had figured out his bloodline, he looked at a clock on the wall and saw that it was about midnight. So he decided to go choose a bedroom. When he was looking around, he found a room that had been decked out as a nursery. The walls were blue and had little stars painted around the room randomly. There was a crib in one corner with a little plush fox resting on the pillow. A bookshelf was on one wall, a picture frame was resting on the middle shelf. It was a picture of the Yondaime with a very pregnant Kushina, both were smiling. The room made a few tears slowly track down his cheeks. He picked up the picture and the fox toy and left the room. He then went into the master bedroom and set down the picture next to the bed before lying down hugging the fox toy. It didn't take long to fall asleep in his exhausted state, mentally and emotionally. Well, it seems the boy has decided to take things seriously for once. Maybe he will be worthy of my power. But he will have to take it, thought the Kyuubi from his prison in Naruto's mind. Line break. 1 week later, all the graduating students were making their way to the academy for their team assignments. Sakura and Ino were racing each other to sit next to Sasuke. Hinata was quietly sitting in the classroom hoping that Naruto was given a second chance, and the rest of the new genin were either sitting bored or rushing to get to there. Hinata's hopes were almost gone until she noticed a boy sitting across the room from here trying to hide under his hood. A quick look with her Byakugan showed it to be Naruto. She was so happy and she liked his new look. The orange hadn't been the best of choices in the first place, so anything was an improvement. For Naruto, he was really hoping no one would notice him, but it seems his luck was against him today because Sasuke, being his normal obnoxious self, came over to Naruto and simply said, "Get out of my seat." Naruto replied by saying, "I don't see your name on it." After he said this, he realized that it was probably a bad idea, seeing as he wanted to remain unnoticed by his class. Sasuke simply hit Naruto, causing his hood to come flying off, showing his face to everyone. "Naruto, what are you doing here? This is for genin only," asked Shikamaru. Naruto held up his Hittite before replying, "Sensei let me take a retest, and I passed with flying colors." Quote, "I don't care, you're still in my seat, so move," grunted Sasuke. It was at this point that the boy sitting in front of Naruto bumped Sasuke, causing him to fall into Naruto. Before the two could collide, Naruto had stood up and in a burst of speed moved to the other side of the room and put his hood back on, leaving behind a dust trail. Sasuke fell and landed face first on the chair. Ino and Sakura entered the room at the same time and started arguing over who was first, and who would get to sit next to their precious Sasuke-kun. And I'm not going to write the argument because these two annoy the living daylights out of me. Then they saw Sasuke still face down on the chair. They both rushed over and picked him up, causing him to grunt in annoyance before sitting down with Sakura on one side and Ino on the other. Before anything else could happen, Iruka walked in, albeit a little stiffly, seeing as how he was bandaged from the waist up to prevent spinal damage. He began a speech on how it had been an honor teaching them and that they should go on to do great things. He then began reading off the teams, going through all the no-name genin before leaving only the best and brightest. Everyone listened as he started reading off the names of the clan heirs. Team 7, led by Kakashi Hatake, will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno. At this, Sakura screamed out, "Tr. Ue love wins overall." Iruka waited for her to be quiet before continuing, and Kiba Inuzuka. This caused both Sakura and Kiba to slam their heads on their desks, yelling, "No!" Quote, Team 8, led by Kurenai Uehi, will consist of Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Naruto Uzumaki. Hinata was ecstatic. She would be on the same team as her Naruto-kun. Sakura and Ino were confused. They thought Naruto had failed. Ino decided that Naruto must have done a retest or something. Unfortunately, Sakura wasn't that bright. She yelled out, "Iruka-sensei, you made a mistake. That baka didn't pass. And he never will pass, because he is nowhere near as good as Sasuke-kun." When Sakura finished speaking, she had love hearts in her eyes. Naruto felt something break inside his heart, knowing that Sakura would never love him. Iruka then said, "Actually, Sakura, Naruto did a retest and passed with flying colors. Now then, back to what I was trying to do. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so Team 10, led by Asuma Sarutobi, will consist of Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamichi." Finished Iruka. "Now go eat lunch, get to know your teammates, and then meet back here in an hour to meet your senseis." With that, the class all left. Hinata, Shino, and Naruto were sitting at a bench eating their lunch. None of them were talking. Hinata wasn't talking because she was afraid she would faint the second Naruto started talking to her. Shino was just being himself and Naruto was just sitting there awkwardly. He had never really met Hinata and Shino, so he didn't know what to say. "I believe it would be beneficial to the team if we talked to one another," came the monotone voice of Shino. "I would talk, but I don't know much about you guys, so I didn't know what to talk about," stated Naruto. "Well, then it would be logical to introduce ourselves, and tell each other about our abilities," said Shino. "I shall go first. I am Shino Aburame. I employ insects for my ninjutsu. My clan do not focus too heavily on taijutsu or genjutsu. I believe that with logic any situation becomes easy to solve." "Where do you keep your insects?" inquired Naruto. "Inside tunnels in my body," replied Shino nervously, showing emotion in his voice for the first time since he started talking. "Cool," was Naruto's simple reply. Shino was shocked. Most people avoided his clan because they were turned off by the fact that the Aburames had bugs crawling inside them. But Naruto seemed think that it was cool. This concept was new to the stoic bug user. Naruto went second. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. I use the shadow clone jutsu in my bloodline, the flash step. I also started learning some fuinjutsu. I am horrible at genjutsu, and I started learning a new taijutsu style, from my mother's clan. I have abnormally large chakra reserves, so I can utilize high-level jutsu but not low-level." Hinata was shocked. She didn't know he was from a clan, neither did she know he had a bloodline. Hinata went last. "I am Hina, Hinata Hyuga. I use my Byakugan to see long distances and through objects. I use my clan's taijutsu, the gentle fist. I do not use ninjutsu or genjutsu, but my Byakugan can break most genjutsu." Hearing this, Naruto screamed out, "Wow, that's awesome, Hinata-chan." Upon hearing Naruto add the chan honorific, Hinata blushed bright red. Naruto looked on worried. "Are you feeling alright, Hinata-chan?" And with that the white-eyed princess promptly fainted. Does this happen a lot? Asked Naruto with a worried expression on his face. Shino just shrugged before replying, only when you're around. This caused Naruto to look even more confused because even if he had seemed to mature he still had no idea when it came to women. Line break. When Hinata eventually woke up they made their way back into the classroom. Once they were seated they looked around at the other teams. The mainly civilian teams were all just sitting around, the girls were all just staring at Sasuke with hearts in their eyes and the guys were all looking at Sasuke enviously, mainly because he was the most powerful guy in the class. With the clan ninja, things were slightly different. From Team 10, Ino was like all the other fangirls, staring at Sasuke with hard eyes. Shikamaru was sleeping on the desk and Choji was simply eating yet another bag of chips. Naruto found this team to be altogether boring. When he looked at Team 7 he couldn't help but laugh. Sakura was trying to get Sasuke to go on a date with her. Sasuke was trying to ignore Sakura with all his willpower and Kiba was, well, he was trying to hit on two girls sitting behind him, and sadly for him they had eyes only for Sasuke. Line break. After waiting for a while a red-eyed woman walked in. Team 8 follow me. And with that she left, with Naruto, Shino and a still blushing Hinata close behind. They kept walking until they made it to a small cafe. When they walked up to the counter to order, the man looked them over before stopping to look at Naruto and saying, "I'm sorry young man but hoods are not allowed in the cafe." Kurenai looked at Naruto before making hurry-up gestures with her hands to get him to comply. Naruto was acting really apprehensive about taking off the hood but in the end just took it off. As soon as the hood came off the man behind the counter started yelling, "Don't worry ladies, I shall protect you from this monster, you must leave you blonde-haired menace." When he finished this mini rant he looked over to find that the Jonin was holding back the small Hyuga. Her face was bright red and chakra was visibly leaking from her fingertips. The Aburame was audibly buzzing and the blonde menace, as the man put it, was slowly walking out. By the time Kurenai had calmed down her two genin she realized that Naruto was no longer with them. They walked out to see him sitting on a bench seemingly crying. Kurenai walked up to him to comfort him. "Naruto, what's wrong?" she said almost lovingly. She couldn't bear to see such a young child so sad. "It's nothing Kurenai-sensei. Just go enjoy whatever you were going to order, I'll just wait here. Stores like that don't let me in, all because of my condition. The only store I can actually go to is Ichiraku," said Naruto sounding rather depressed. Kurenai looked up at her other two students, they both nodded to her. "Looks like we're having ramen." Naruto looked up with hope shining in his eyes. "Thanks Kurenai-sensei," he whispered quietly. Line break. At Ichiraku's ramen bar, Team 8 looked on in shock as Naruto ate bowl after bowl of ramen. There was about 15 bowls stacked up in front of him. Hinata was finishing her first, Shino and Kurenai were finishing their second. As everyone finished their ramen Kurenai started talking, "Okay, now that we are done eating why don't we tell each other a little about ourselves?" "Well sensei, we all know each other, so it would be logical for you to go first," said Shino. "Well okay then. My name is Kurenai Uehi. I like genjutsu and my friends, I dislike perverts and people who think kunoichi can't be proper ninja. My dream is to become the greatest genjutsu mistress in the world." Then Shino, you go next. "Okay sensei, I am Shino Aburame. I like my clan's insects and people who treat me fairly. I dislike people who kill insects and people who avoid my clan because we hold insects inside us. My dream is to become a logical and just clan head, like my father." Hinata went next. "I am Hinata Hyuga. ILL like people who don't give up and someone special." She looked at Naruto and blushed. Again he was oblivious. She then continued with a determination visible in her eyes. T1 would never associate with Hinata. I dislike perverts and those who look down upon others because they think they are weak and those who unfairly judge good people. My drive dream is to be seen as STR strong by my clan and to tell the person that I like my feelings. She finally finished with a large blush. Naruto went last. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen. This caused the two Ichiraku that ran the stand to smile, and people who treat me fairly like you guys. I dislike the time it takes to cook ramen and people who treat me badly. My dream is to become the greatest Hokage ever and to master my bloodline and my family's different specialties. When he was finished, Kurenai began talking again. Now tomorrow we will have your genin test. Sensei, we already had a test. Naruto pointed out. That was to see if you were capable of being genin. This test is to see if you will stay genin. 66% of the new genin will fail this test. Only 3 teams will stay as genin, the rest will go back to the academy. So meet me tomorrow at training ground 9 at 9 o'clock sharp. This was met with a round of, yes sensei. From the genin. Line break. The next morning at 8:30 all 3 genin were at the training ground. When they arrived they looked at each other, before all asking at the same time, why did you come early? Shino answered first, I came to see if there was any interesting insect life here. Quote. Hinata was next. Well I was just being cautious in case I got street stopped. Naruto went last. Well I woke up about 3 minutes ago and saw the time, I didn't want to be late so I sprinted here. Quote. But Naruto, it is not possible to run from your house to here in 3 minutes, it would take 40 minutes to get here. Came the monotone voice of Shino. Naruto just smirked before disappearing in a burst of speed, appearing on the other side of the training ground in the blink of an eye. Please explain Naruto. This voice made all 3 genin spin round to see Kurenai materialize out of a tree. Well, that was the second stage of my bloodline. The first is simply my body adjusts to high-speed motion. The second stage, which is what you just saw, is basically wind manipulation at an extremely high level. It moves the air molecules out of the way when I move, drastically increasing my speed. The third stage is moving my molecules instead of the air, allowing me to teleport. I can't use the third stage properly until I raise my fire affinity. I was able to use the third stage when I first activated it because of a special condition. What is the condition, Naruto? Asked Shino, showing actual curiosity. Kurenai then butt in saying, that is not allowed to be revealed at this time. Shino and Hinata both nodded in understanding. Now let me explain this test. Kurenai pulled out a chalkboard and 3 pieces of colored chalk. The chalkboard attached to the back of her dress and she handed the chalk to the 3 genin. You each have until midday to mark the board with your chalk. The first 2 people to mark it will pass, the other will fail. If you don't get a mark on it, you will fail. When I say go, you may begin, and don't forget, come at me with all you've got, use lethal force if you want to, otherwise you will have no hope. And go. As soon as she said go, she disappeared. I believe this is a teamwork exercise. Stated Shino. What makes you think that, Shino? She said only 2 of us would pass. If it was a teamwork exercise, then why would one person have to fail? Quote. It is to try and make us split apart. Think logically, there has never been a 2-man genin squad. Naruto thought for a minute before flashing Shino a thumbs up. They spent the next half-hour devising a plan. Hinata only talked when her opinion was asked. The thought going through her head was, as so, I hope I don't make Naruto-kun and Shino fail. As they were planning, Kurenai watched them with a proud smile on her face, knowing that her team would pass. Unfortunately, she couldn't hear what they were planning. If she got any closer, they would notice the genjutsu hiding her. When the genin stopped planning, they all spread out into a reverse triangle formation, with Naruto and Shino leading and Hinata at the back. All 3 put their hands into the ram seal. Shino's insects flowed out of his sleeves, Hinata's Byakugan flared into life, and Naruto just seemed to be channeling chakra. Whatever Naruto was planning to do, it didn't work, thought Kurenai, thinking that Naruto was the student she need to work with. The most. Uzumaki style. Genjutsu destruction. And with that, Naruto released a wave of condensed chakra, disrupting the genjutsu that was concealing Kurenai. Before Kurenai could even react, Shino's bugs were rushing toward her. When the insects reached her, she performed a substitution with a nearby log. But as soon as she had escaped, Hinata was attacking her with a flurry of gentle fist strikes. She was hard-pressed to dodge them all, knowing that even one could end the fight. She quickly placed a genjutsu on Hinata. It didn't last long, but it was merely meant as a distraction. Kurenai quickly disabled Hinata with a chop to the neck. Shino started launching his insects again, but this time Kurenai was ready. After performing a few hand signs, Shino just stopped moving. Shino tried to break the genjutsu, but couldn't. That genjutsu has multiple levels. With your insects constantly draining your chakra, you can't build up enough chakra to dispel it, stated Kurenai matter-of-factly. Kurenai got confused when Shino suddenly stopped trying to dispel the jutsu. It seems you have gotten cocky now that the two clan ninja have been disabled. But you have forgotten Naruto's explanation of how his bloodline works, stated Shino, still with a monotone. Kurenai then felt wind rush past her and the sound of chalk on a board was heard. When she looked back, she saw 3 perfectly parallel lines on the board. When she looked at Naruto, she saw him holding all 3 pieces of chalk and a smug look on his face. So Kurenai-sensei, how are you going to tell which chalk line was drawn first? Questioned Naruto. Kurenai sighed in defeat. She didn't think that they would outsmart her so quickly. She released the genjutsu on Shino and went and woke Hinata up. Hey Kurenai-sensei, are you gonna tell us if we passed or not? Yelled our favorite loudmouth blonde. Kurenai smiled before responding. Yes Naruto, you all pass, not because you drew all 3 chalk lines at the same time, but because you thought up a plan and worked together to move me into AP position where I wouldn't see Naruto move until too late. Well, that was the plan, sensei, stated Naruto. While this whole conversation was going on, Shino and Hinata were silently laughing, seeing Naruto trying to explain to Kurenai that everything was intentional. They would back him up, but wouldn't tell Kurenai that they weren't expecting her to knock Hinata out. It had made Naruto's job even harder. Without the added distraction of Hinata, he had to increase his wind manipulation to an incredibly high level to mask all traces of movement. And because of this, he now succumbed to something he had little experience in, chakra exhaustion. Naruto collapsed mid-sentence. He had been trying to tell Kurenai that the entire fight was planned but didn't get the chance to. Kurenai sighed before dismissing Hinata and Shino. Hinata was a little worried about leaving Naruto unconscious, but Kurenai reassured her. When they had left, she picked up Naruto and carried him to the where she thought he lived, only to find that the building had been demolished. She took Naruto to the Hokage's office instead. When she arrived, she attempted to go see the Hokage, but the 2 Anbu guarding the door wouldn't allow her to enter unless she left Naruto outside the tower. Hearing the commotion, the Hokage opened the door to see what was going on. When he saw what was going on, he straight away signaled to one of the trusted Anbu that guarded the inside of his office. An Anbu wearing a tiger mask came forward and tapped the door guards on their shoulders. When they turned around, he grabbed them and body flickered to the T&I department. Ibiki was going to have a fun appointment. Well, that's the last time I allow new Junin to be promoted into Anbu, sighed the old Hokage. The Tiger Anbu came back at this point. Tiger, can you take Naruto to his house now? Asked the Hokage. Well Kurenai, I can't wait for the team reports tonight. Line break. At the team report meeting, everyone was shocked. Kakashi was on time. Now they knew that something was going to go down. The Hokage walked in with the elders of Konoha behind him. They sat at the front of the room before the Junin senseis started to list off which teams had failed and which passed. Team 7 passed, said Kakashi lazily. This shocked everyone. Kakashi had never passed a team. At the front of the room, the elders all smirked, knowing that the last Uchiha had passed. Team 8 pass, stated Kurenai. Again, the population of the room was shocked that a team with Naruto Uzumaki could pass. Team 10 pass, said Asuma, looking like he didn't want to be in there. and thus the Rookie 9 had been born. Naruto walked into his team's training ground 10 minutes before his first team training session, intent on asking his sensei for help. When he arrived, he saw his sensei leaning against a tree reading a small book. "Kurenai-sensei," Naruto called out to her. She looked up and seemed surprised at first but quickly hid it. "That was close, it's a good thing he couldn't see what I was reading," she thought as she hid the small orange book in her kunai pouch. "So what do you want, Naruto?" she asked, wondering why he would be here early. "Well, I need some help. When I buy new kunai and shuriken, only one shop will sell them to me. I need some new gear, but the stuff I want isn't stocked at my usual place," Naruto explained, with tears brimming in the corners of his eyes from thinking about the treatment he gets in the village. "What do you mean only one store sells to you?" questioned Kurenai. "That isn't what's important right now, I just need to buy some scrolls, sealing tags, paper and ink, tea." "Hey, don't sell those at the ninja supply store," said Naruto, trying to change the subject before more bad memories show up. "Well, okay. After training and missions we can go to a store that I go to," said Kurenai. "I'm going to ask Hokage-sama about this later," she thought. Line break. Team 8 had an interesting day, to say the least. Their team training had involved telling Kurenai what they thought their biggest weakness was, and she helped think of ways to correct these weaknesses. She still left them to figure out the best way and just gave them gentle nudges in the right direction. After training they went for their first mission. Naruto was extremely depressed when he found out he wouldn't be saving a princess or something like that. Instead they chased the devil in feline form, also known as Tora the cat. With Naruto's speed it was easy to catch. Hinata then carried it back. When the boys attempted to carry it, it showed that its claws weren't just for show, but when Hinata picked it up it simply lay back and enjoyed the ride. After this, Team 8 went their separate ways. Hinata and Shino had clan training and Naruto was going to get supplies with Kurenai. She was thoroughly disgusted at the way people would look and treat Naruto. She took him to a small out-of-the-way bookstore. He was able to find everything but sealing tags, but that was good enough. He could get the tags at his normal store. "Thanks, Kurenai-sensei, you are awesome," yelled Naruto as he was about to leave. Naruto, why do you want that stuff anyway?" questioned Kurenai. "Well, I've been looking into seals and the beginner level exercises are all done on tags except for the basic storage seal, which is usually done in a scroll," explained Naruto. "Well, I gotta go, Kurenai-sensei. See you at training tomorrow," yelled Naruto before vanishing in a burst of speed. Now that Naruto was gone, Kurenai headed straight for the Hokage's office to talk to him about stores not letting Naruto in. Naruto's house. As soon as Naruto got home from his training session, he quickly made a shadow clone to go buy some takeout ramen from Ichiraku's. While the clone was walking out, he pulled out a book titled Fuinjutsu for Beginners. He was practicing making sealing scrolls when he suddenly flinched. For some reason he could remember being punched in the head by Sakura while on his way to Ichiraku's. "But my clone was getting ramen, all right," he yelled in his mind as he created a bunch of clones to test his theory. Half an hour later found a Naruto clone reading the Fuinjutsu book, another 10 clones practicing making sealing scrolls, 20 clones in the training ground making exploding notes, and 40 clones going through the library to fin. D scrolls on chakra control and elemental control. The real Naruto was running laps around the compound to increase his speed. With his normal speed increasing, his speed while using his bloodline would increase as well. Naruto was well known for training himself into the ground, and that was just what he did, almost literally gouging a trench with all his repetitive running. Naruto looked around at the training field, seeing the trench he was in and the craters his clones making exploding tags made. He sweat dropped and pulled himself out of the trench. He dispelled his clones and staggered a bit from the sudden influx of information. "Okay, next time the clones pop 10 at a time," he said as he started to walk inside. He paused to look back at the damage and was amazed to see a complex seal array appear on the ground, filling in the craters with earth and collapsing the walls of the trench. "Now that is useful," he said before walking inside. The next few weeks went by without incident. Team 8 would train in the morning and then do a D-rank mission in the afternoon. The team training was focused on basic skills and fixing weaknesses. Naruto was increasing his chakra control, Shino was practicing taijutsu katas, and Hinata was working with Kurenai on her confidence. They would do the individual training from 9 until 11. They would train together and spar until 1. At 1 they would eat lunch and then get their mission. After the mission they would go their separate ways. Kurenai would go hang out with other jonin at a shinobi-only bar. Shino and Hinata would train with their respective clans and Naruto would destroy his training ground with hundreds of clones. He split the clones into groups of 50. There were 2 groups in the library, one looking up jutsu and the other reading through clan scrolls. Outside there was a group practicing fuinjutsu, another practicing jutsu. One group was working on taijutsu and a final group was working on fire manipulation. They were currently trying to set fire to leaves using chakra. They had some luck and would only improve with time. Naruto himself would read his mother's kenjutsu scrolls and practice using her katanas. When he finished training he would go to bed and the clones would dispel gradually through the night. Mission Center. It had been a month since her team had graduated and Kurenai couldn't be happier with their progress. Shino was now high genin in taijutsu and a prodigy among his clan for control over his Kikai beetles. Hinata didn't stutter anymore unless alone with Naruto. And finally Naruto, he had grown the most, he could now teleport fully but only a few times. He now carried swords in a sealing scroll and could beat her in taijutsu. His ninjutsu consisted of mainly high-level techniques. In chakra control, all 3 could all walk on water at such a level that they could have a 3-way spar on top of the water and not have to concentrate on the chakra in air feet. Kurenai was pondering asking for their first C-rank mission, especially after Kakashi took his genin on one a few days earlier. As she was about to ask the Hokage for the mission he spoke first. Kurenai, I would like your team to go back up Kakashi's team. They appear to have run into a bit of trouble and I have decided to send you as aid. Are you sure, Hokage-sama? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but Kakashi won't like another team intruding into his mission. He doesn't like someone TTING next to him at a bar, so sharing a mission is something he would never do. Said Kurenai. He will accept you aid or he will be demoted to Chunin. Said the Hokage with finality, before handing her a scroll. These are the mission parameters. There is also a letter inside for Kakashi to let him know the situation. Kurenai read the scroll and turned to her team, confident that they could handle whatever this mission threw at them. Okay team, we are leaving on a C-rank mission, pack for a month tops. We leave in half an hour. Yes, finally a proper mission. Yelled out the resident loudmouth also known as Naruto. The other members of Team 8 just smiled before they all darted off to pack. They all met at the gate exactly half an hour later. Now Naruto, I need you to send clones to scout ahead. It takes a civilian 3 days to get to our destination in the land of waves. It should take 2 hours for us and half an hour for your clones. Said Kurenai as they started to tree run. After an hour running Naruto suddenly stiffened, almost missing the next branch. Sensei, Kakashi and his team have encountered enemy ninja but seems to have won the encounter, said Naruto with a surprising level of maturity in his voice. Okay, double time everyone. We need to be there to back them up in case of more attacks. Naruto, I want your swords to be at the ready. Said Kurenai and was answered by a chorus of, Hi Sensei. Team 8 made it to the small dock that Team 7 had gotten onto a boat from. Naruto, we need to get across here fast and Hinata and Shino don't have a large enough chakra supply. Think you could give them a lift? Asked Kurenai. Naruto just smirked before making 3 shadow clones. Kurenai raised an eyebrow before one of the clones grabbed her and the others grabbed her other students. A sudden rushing sensation surrounded her as they sped across the water. Looking behind them, Kurenai saw the trails they were leaving in the water. She looked down and saw that Naruto wasn't channeling chakra to his feet. He was running fast enough that he wasn't even sinking. Shortly they were on the shore, a light mist covering the ground. Naruto was sitting down catching his breath. That was the furthest he had run in a straight line in a single go, and he had gained the memories and fatigue from the clones as well. Making it worse. When he had caught his breath he got up. Sensei, Kakashi and his team were attacked by the enemy nin up here, he said as he led them towards the battle site. Thank you Naruto. Hinata, can you see where Team 7 is now? Questioned Kurenai. Hinata activated her Byakugan. They're this way sensei, but Kakashi-san has little chakra and his team doesn't look much better, said Hinata. Kurenai just nodded before they darted off to where Hinata had spotted Team 7. One look into the house of Tazuna the bridge builder would show 3 young genin and a small white dog collapsed all over the house. Kiba was on the ground, his nin dog Akamaru curled into a ball inside his jacket. Sakura was on a couch fast asleep, and finally Sasuke was leaning against a wall, keeping watch, but his eyes betrayed how tired he really was. They had only just survived the fight against Zabuza. Kakashi would have been down here as well, but he was upstairs unconscious in the only spare bed in the house. This was the scene that Team 8 found upon arriving. Naruto would have laughed at them if it weren't for the fact that had his team been in the same situation as theirs, they would probably look the same. When they had arrived, Sasuke had launched a kunai. Luckily Sasuke had a really bad aim whilst tired, and Team 8 could dodge high-speed projectiles as well, thanks to a little help from their sensei's friend Anko. The kunai was lodged in the doorframe before Sasuke realized who it was. A look of relief crossed his face before he promptly fell unconscious. Kurenai surveyed the room before looking to her team. Naruto, I want some clones surrounding the building. Shino, send some bugs out to search the surrounding area. Hinata, check over the members of Team 7 and flare your Byakugan every few minutes in case any enemies get past the Naruto's and Shino's bugs. She was met with a chorus of, "Hi sensei," from her genin. As each genin went about their tasks, Kurenai went to check on Kakashi. Upon arriving in the room he was in, she found him completely out cold. From what she could tell, he wouldn't be up for a while. Team 8 watched over Team 7 in the house that night. They introduced themselves to Tazuna and his doe, Ghther Tsunami, when they got the chance. Kiba was the first to wake up. When he saw Team 8 he was at first shocked but then glad. If Gato had any more shinobi working for him they wouldn't survive. Sasuke woke up next, acting like he wasn't asleep in the first place. Naruto smirked under his hood, knowing that no one could see it. The look on Sasuke's face had been hilarious, like he was trying to make sure he wasn't caught sleeping when he had been clearly knocked out. The two teams minus Sakura had eaten dinner together with Tazuna and Tsunami. Halfway through the meal a small boy came in, grabbing a plate of rice before walking upstairs. That's my son Inari. He doesn't talk to many people, explained Tsunami, seeing the confused expressions worn by the genin. After the meal Sasuke and Kiba carried Sakura up to the spare room before they settled down there for the night. Kurenai looked to her team, who had each set up a sleeping bag in a position which gave them a clear line of sight to an entrance. She set herself up on a couch facing the door before signaling to each member of her team when they would be keeping watch. Next morning, Naruto had been up last keeping watch, so he woke his teammates up at the crack of dawn before looking to the staircase to see Kakashi stumbling down. Kurenai, what are you doing here? Questioned Kakashi. In response, Kurenai just handed over the scroll from the Hokage. Kakashi had a quick look over it before handing it back to Kurenai. Kakashi, can you tell me what happened to your team? Questioned Kurenai. On our way here we encountered 2 Chunin-level missing nin from Kiri known as the Demon Brothers. They weren't a problem, but shortly after arriving on the shore here we were attacked by the infamous demon of the mist, Zabuza Momochi. Quote. Flashback. As Team 7 started walking up the shore, a thick mist rolled in. Kiba suddenly sniffed before throwing a kunai towards a bush. A small rabbit came flying out, terrified from the sharp blade almost killing it. Sakura proceeded to hit Kiba over the head. Wait, that rabbit is white. It shouldn't still have its winter coat unless it was raised indoors. Shit, thought Kakashi, down now. Sasuke grabbed Sakura while Kakashi grabbed Tazuna. Kiba was already down from Sakura's almost manly strength. As soon as they got below waist height, a large cleaver shot past where they had been standing. When the sword collided with a tree, a man appeared standing on it. He was wearing camo pants and dark blue ninja sandals. He had no shirt on and bandages wrapped all around his mouth, his slashed Kirihite worn on the side of his head. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the mist, stated Kakashi. The great Sharingan Kakashi knows my name, I'm touched, said the large man. Hand over the bridge builder and this won't get messy. I'm afraid I can't do that, Zabuza, replied Kakashi as he lifted his headband revealing his fully matured Sharingan. Zabuza just shrugged in res. Ponce. Sharingan, could he be of the Uchiha clan, thought Sasuke. More fun for me, Zabuza said with finality before forming a hand seal. Ninpu. Hidden mist jutsu, he whispered, his voice still carrying throughout the clearing. There are 8 points on the human body that kill instantly. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys and the heart. Which one should I attack first? Zabuza flooded the air with his killing intent. It was so great that Sasuke raised a kunai, ready to plunge it into his own heart. Sasuke, I'll protect you, Kakashi said using a bit of chakra in his voice to clear the ki from the air around the genin. Kakashi prepared to be attacked before realizing that Zabuza would aim for Tazuna to avoid a prolonged fight. Zabuza tried to slash Tazuna but was stopped by a kunai to the stomach courtesy of Kakashi. Kakashi looked shocked as water came from the wound instead of blood. Water clone, stated Kakashi before he was bisected by Zabuza's blade, but instead of a corpse there was only water. Kakashi appeared behind Zabuza and kicked him out onto the water. So the Sharingan can copy my jutsu even through this mist. Its power is truly formidable. As Zabuza finished saying this, Kakashi shot onto the water and fought him, kunai to cleaver. The fight was going well for Kakashi until he dropped under the water to avoid a slash. It wasn't until he was under the water that he realized the water was too thick. But by that time he was trapped. Sweden. Water prison jutsu. Success. Kakashi looked around to see that he was trapped. He could use a burst of Raiden chakra to escape, but there was a chance that he would fry himself. In the process, he watched as Zabuza made more water clones to attack his team. He weighed up the options before yelling to his team. Run! You guys have no hope of beating Zabuza. He had hoped the genin would listen, but when dealing with Sasuke and Kiba there was no such thing as running away. Sensei, you told us that those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their teammates are worse than trash. We won't let some 2-bit trash like this stop us, yelled out the ever brash Kiba. Kiba looked to Sasuke before both boys nod to each other. Sasuke shot forward and attacked the clones, taking them out, but once they were gone Zabuza made more. The new clones knocked Sasuke and Kiba to the ground. Suddenly Kiba erupted into smoke revealing Akamaru. While the clones were confused, Sasuke took them out. Out on the water Zabuza heard a cry of Suga, as a tornado of claws and fangs shot toward him, forcing him to jump away from the water prison, releasing Kakashi. Kiba was left floating in the water watching the fight between the two jonin. Zabuza and Kakashi were now standing opposite each other, staring each other down. Zabuza started to do hand seals with Kakashi copying them. They finished the jutsu at the same time, both calling out, Sweden. Water Dragon Jutsu. The two dragons coiled around each other fighting for dominance before both dragons collided and collapsed. Zabuza started to sweat a bit before he started another series of hand seals. Kakashi started copying them. You're just a copying monkey, laughed Zabuza before he saw an image of himself behind Kakashi. Seeing this caused him to pause for a second. That second was all Kakashi needed to finish the jutsu. Sweden. Great Waterfall Jutsu, Kakashi yelled as an orb of water rose up on front of him. It started to swirl before launching towards Zabuza, knocking him back into a tree. Kakashi walked forward ready to finish the job. Flashback end. When I went to finish him, he asked if I could see the future. I said yes, and your future is death. Before I could kill him, a group of Senbon pierced his throat. I checked for a pulse and found none. A hunter nin dropped down and thanked me before taking Zabuza's body. Kakashi trailed off. Shit, he's still alive. Kakashi cursed. Kakashi and Kurenai then went to another room to talk strategy and schedules for the week over some coffee. With Team 8, each member of Team 8 watched their sensei walk off talking to Kakashi. They shrugged before pulling out a few small items. No point wasting good training time. Shino had a scroll on taijutsu styles open in front of him. Hinata was reading a scroll on basic first aid, and finally Naruto was balancing a kunai on the tip of his finger using his chakra. Hey, what do you think Team 7 have learned since the famous copy nin Kakashi started teaching them? Questioned Naruto. Shino just shrugged. Anyo, I don't know Naruto-kun, but they must have learned several new jutsu. Said Hinata. Oh well, do you think Kurenai-sensei will teach us anything new? Questioned Naruto. This time he got two shrugs in response. He shrugged as well before adding a kunai to another finger while waiting for Kurenai to return to tell them what they were going to do. Kakashi led Team 7 out to a clearing in the forest the next morning. Sakura was still a little sore from the day before, but Kakashi figured a bit of training would do her good. Team 8 trailed behind them, curious to see how far along they were in their training. When they arrived in the clearing, Kakashi leant against his crutches before telling his team what to do. Today we will be learning to climb trees, started Kakashi before being interrupted by Kiba, but sensei, anyone can climb a tree. That is true, Kiba, but can everyone climb trees without using their hands? Questioned Kakashi as he channeled chakra to his feet and walked up the tree. All the genin present were amazed. Team 7 at seeing Kakashi walk vertically up a tree, and Team 8 because this was the first thing they had learned. Anyo-sensei, but how does this help us? Questioned Sakura. Without missing a beat, Kakashi answered. Well, Sakura, this is a chakra control exercise. The better your chakra control, the easier it will be to do jutsu and to perform more advanced skills. Use these to mark your progress, he said as he threw a kunai to each of them. Sakura got it on her first try. Kiba slipped off the tree after his second step, and Sasuke broke the bark and fell when he overloaded it with chakra. After a few attempts, Sasuke realized that Team 8 were walking away. Hey Dobi, how come you're not doing this too? Yelled out Sasuke. Team 8 just looked back and shook their heads before running straight up the trees before launching themselves off the top branches and landed standing on the water of a river that flowed alongside the clearing. Team 7 just looked on amazed before Sasuke and Kiba ran back to their own trees to continue. Sakura was currently resting on a branch, her chakra reserves almost depleted. Kurenai took one last look at Kakashi's genin before shaking her head and walking off with her team. When they were far enough away from Team 7, Kurenai turned to her team. Naruto makes some clones to protect the bridge, and some to protect the house. Shino sends some beetles with them. Her two male genin nodded before doing as she asked. Now today we will be sparring, no holds barred. First I will spar with Shino while Naruto and Hinata spar. They nodded before moving to two different areas to spar. With Naruto and Hinata, the two genin bowed to each other before springing into action. Hinata launched forward, her Byakugan already active. She charged chakra to her fingertips and launched a series of quick strikes to a stunned-looking Naruto. But instead of hearing the sound of Naruto screaming in pain, she was greeted with the popping of a shadow clone. Using her Byakugan, she quickly located Naruto and threw a handful of shuriken. When the shuriken landed, Naruto was long gone, already standing at the opposite end of the clearing. Your speed is increasing every spar, Naruto-kun. Hinata commented. Even with her Byakugan active, she had only seen the trail of wind chakra left in his wake. Naruto just smirked before he vanished from his spot in a blur. Hinata barely brought her guard up before Naruto was upon her. He was nothing but a blur of fists and feet as he attacked Hinata with a taijutsu style based around his bloodline. It was called the Flash Fist. It utilized quick strikes and retreating before a counter could be made. He was only just beginning, but even with the basic katas he could beat a low chunin level ninja without having to use the second stage of his bloodline. Hinata had been sparring with her teammates for a few weeks now and was starting to get a handle on how to predict and block the sequence of Naruto's strikes. A lot still made it past her guard, but she could block a lot of them and even land a few Jiyuken strikes. After a few minutes of the back and forward of the intense taijutsu match, Naruto moved back, rubbing his arm. Round bruises could be seen running down the length of his arms. He tried to flare his chakra but found he couldn't get it to run through his arms. "You're getting faster yourself, Hinata-chan," Naruto commented as he concentrated harder, causing small whirlwinds to dance around his shoulder and gradually down his arms. Hinata gasped in shock. She had never seen someone force open chakra points before, but Naruto's Fuden chakra had acted like a needle, piercing through the chakra point and widening until they had popped open again. He flexed his muscles before saying, "How about we kick things up a notch?" As he said this, he channeled chakra to the inside of his sleeves, or more specifically the seals inscribed into the sleeves. Hinata pulled out 2 kunai as 2 katana slid out of Naruto's sleeves. The blades were almost identical, with the hilts being blood red and the blades themselves black with golden kanji on each one. On one blade it had the kanji for bloody, and on the other it had whirlpool. Hinata gulped. She knew how efficient he was with the blades. Naruto smirked before charging at Hinata without his bloodline. When moving at those speeds, he didn't want to be wielding swords or he would lose an eye. When he clashed with Hinata, she blocked his swords with her kunai. She felt herself getting pushed back, so she quickly jumped back. "This is unfair. Hang on a moment, Hinata-chan," said Naruto as he lodged one of his swords into a nearby tree. "Now that's fair." Quote. He charged again, and this time when they clashed, Hinata could hold him back better, that is until he started to use his proper kenjutsu style. His attacks became more random and unpredictable, making a counter almost impossible and leaving Hinata using her flexibility to avoid the slashes she couldn't block. Suddenly Hinata found she couldn't move anymore. Behind her was a shadow clone holding a hand seal. That's when she realized there were streams of Fuden chakra wrapped around her arms and legs. Naruto's katana was resting on her shoulder, inches from her throat. "You did really great, Hinata-chan." Naruto beamed at her. She blushed at the close proximity of her crush. "Hey Hinata-chan, why are so red? Did I push you a little too hard?" questioned Naruto. "Onyo and Naruto-kun, it's nothing," stuttered Hinata. Naruto just shrugged before walking to his sword and pulling it out of the tree. "Hey Hinata-chan, should I leave the swords out of the seals or should I put them back?" Naruto asked. "It looks good when they shoot out of your sleeves," answered Hinata. "So Hinata-chan, do you wanna train together until Shino and Sensei are done with their spar?" questioned Naruto. Hinata just nodded before starting to practice some katas for the Jiyuken. Naruto reached into his pocket where he activated a seal. When he pulled his arm out, he was holding a scroll. He unrolled the scroll and unsealed several plates of metal. He attached the plates to various parts of his body with chakra and started walking up a tree. He had to constantly practice his chakra control because of the rate that his reserves increased daily. He trained for about 10 minutes in his chakra control before he realized something was wrong. He feel the air around him moving and there was a large disturbance coming near. Hinata was practicing without her Byakugan. She wasn't using any chakra right now in case she was needed quickly. Behind her, a group of thugs had found their way into the clearing. There were 5 in total. They spotted Hinata straight away and snuck up behind her. Normally Hinata would have noticed them coming, but she was still thinking about how much Naruto cared for her. Before she even realized what was happening, the thugs had grabbed her. Up in the tree, Naruto turned in time to see the thugs grabbing Hinata. He could feel the Kyuubi's chakra slowly feeding into his system. the Kaden-based demon chakra flowed side by side with his Fudan chakra. A low growl escaped his lips before the metal plates dropped to the ground red-hot and steaming. His swords appeared from the seals and he vanished in a flash of red, appearing in the center of the group, his blades flashing around him. In a split second the thugs were dead on the ground, Naruto's sword still lodged into the heart of one man. Naruto was holding Hinata. She was clutching his shirt like it was a lifeline. The blood of the thugs stained the ground around, leaving a perfect circle of dry ground around Naruto. Both of the genin sobbed gently, Hinata from the terror she felt when they had grabbed her, and Naruto was looking at the bodies around him. I'm a monster, the villagers were right. I killed them all without batting an eye. Naruto thought. Thank you Naruto-kun. Hinata managed to force out. I am monster Hinata-chan, I killed all these men without any remorse. I felt good that I killed them after they grabbed you. Naruto sobbed. He was not expecting what came next. You are not a monster Naruto. You saved me. They deserved it after what they did. You are a kind and caring and definitely not a monster. A monster wouldn't act like you do. And I know you aren't a monster because I like you and I know what you're like. Hinata suddenly slapped her hands over her own mouth, realizing what she had just said. "You'll like me," stuttered out Naruto, not really understanding the concept of someone caring for him, especially after he had slaughtered those thugs. Yes I do. I've liked you for a long time and I like you even more now that you saved me from these men. She spat out the word men like it was a disease. Naruto jumped over the corpses and sat down against a tree, Hinata still clutching his chest. He wrapped her in a hug before they fell asleep. With Kurenai and Shino. Shino was puffing on the ground. He had been able to break out of his sensei's genjutsu fairly easily, but she had kept him on his toes, stretching the spar out for a good hour. Come on Shino, we should go find the other two, instructed Kurenai. Shino just nodded as he pulled himself to his feet and swallowed a soldier pill to boost his chakra supply to prevent his beetles from getting too hungry. Shino led the way using the female beetle he had placed on Hinata as a beacon. When they arrived they saw the mess that was once a group of patrolling thugs. They looked around and found Naruto and Hinata asleep. Kurenai walked over and woke up the two genin, after committing the scene to memory for embarrassment purposes later. She got a quick brief from Naruto, who seemed to sob a bit when he talked about what had happened, but he regained his confidence when Hinata grabbed his hand and squeezed. Alright, you guys head back to Tazuna's house and I'll clean up here. When I return we'll go to the bridge to aid Kakashi in guarding Tazuna. The genin nodded and darted off. Kurenai turned to the bodies and was about to laugh when she saw that Naruto's swords were still lodged in a body. Naruto appeared in a red flash, looked at the bodies and almost threw up before composing himself. Almost forgot these, he choked out before darting off again. The rest of the day Naruto and Hinata couldn't look at each other without blushing. This was noticed by the members of Team 7 who were wondering what had happened. When they arrived back at Tazuna's house that evening, Naruto grabbed Hinata's hand before she went inside. He gestured to the roof. She nodded and both jumped up. Did you mean it Hinata-chan, when you said you liked me? Asked Naruto, a blush that was only rivaled by Hinata's adorned his face. Hi, Naruto-kun, I really like you. She stuttered out. Then Hinata-chan, would you like to, I dunno, maybe go out sometime? Asked Naruto, his blush intensifying as he slightly flinched, expecting a punch after the way Sakura used to treat him. He was pleasantly surprised when Hinata answered him by kissing him on the cheek. Hi Naruto-kun, she said before she started to sway before fainting. She then muttered in her sleep, if this is a dream I hate you Kami. Naruto chuckled before carrying her inside and setting her in her sleeping bag. He pulled out a piece of paper from his Fuinjutsu kit and wrote a small note. It wasn't a dream Hinata-chan. He placed the note in her hand before heading into the dining room for dinner. Where's Hinata? Questioned Kurenai. She was really tired after her ordeal today and is asleep. Naruto replied. Kurenai nodded but eyed him carefully like she knew what had really happened. Naruto smiled before digging into his food. The next day Kurenai took her team to the bridge to guard Tazuna. She figured Kakashi's genin needed more training than hers did. Upon arrival Naruto created a veritable army of shadow clones that spread out around the bridge and surrounding area. Many of the clones transformed into rocks or small animals, leaving only a few clones still in their normal appearance. Shino spread some beetles around the area to fill any gaps left in the security after Naruto's clones settled. Kurenai surveyed her team's work and was happy with the way they had set up the defenses. Okay, you guys can do some training within the perimeter setup. We don't want another incident occurring, instructed Kurenai. Her team nodded before walking off to train. Kurenai herself found a high vantage place so she could watch her team, while also reading a certain orange book that Kakashi was so openly fond of. With Shino walked over to a tree and concentrated, causing insects of all kinds to come flowing out of the forest. He then spent the rest of the day sorting through the bugs for anything that could be added to his colony or bred back at his family's compound. Boring, right? With Naruto and Hinata, the budding young couple walked down under the bridge for their training. Hinata was meditating, trying to increase the size of the tenketsu behind her eyes to improve her Byakugan. Naruto looked at her for a moment, admiring her beauty and serenity. How did I never notice how amazing she is before? He thought as he prepared to train his fire manipulation. So far he could only really teleport short distances unless using Kyuubi's chakra. He grabbed a leaf from off the ground before sitting in a lotus position. He held the leaf in his palm and started channeling his Kaden into the leaf. At first nothing happened, until the center of the leaf started to turn brown and smoke. Slowly a hole was burning through the leaf, spreading towards the edges until all that was left was ash. Good, that one is all but perfect now, time to practice the harder one, stated Naruto with satisfaction. He pulled out an old shuriken that looked too blunt to pierce the skin. He held this one between both hands, holding onto a spike with each hand. A glow of chakra surrounded it. As the glow started to spread into the metal, the shuriken started to heat up, until it was white hot and almost melted. Now to apply some wind, he said as he channeled Fuden chakra to his hands, causing small blades to whip along the edge of the now soft shuriken. When the wind had done its work, Naruto plunged the shuriken into the water under the bridge. The water hissed for a second as it rapidly cooled the hot metal. When Naruto pulled his hand out of the water, he was holding a small metal sculpture, a simple leaf. When the metal had been softened by the heat, he had shaped it with the wind. The heating part was the actual exercise for improving Kaden control, but he had a small moment of genius with the shaping part. Blushing, Naruto walked over to Hinata to give the leaf to her. When he was halfway to her, he stopped. If I'm going to give her a gift, the first gift I'll give her, it has to be better than just a simple leaf, he thought before walking back to where he was practicing before and pulling out another of the old shuriken. He had stocked up on old busted tools when he saw that heating metal to almost melting was the next part. Naruto sat back in the lotus position and started to channel the different elements to start with his little sculpture making. If I shape it with Fuden while I'm still heating it with Kaden, it should be easier to shape it without the metal cooling and becoming brittle, he thought as he started using both elements at once. 10 minutes later, Naruto was concentrating as hard as he could, trying to use his chakra on the old shuriken, but for some reason he couldn't get the shuriken to even glow. He knew he wasn't out of chakra or not using chakra because he could feel a slow pull signifying that he was using it. He just didn't know what was using the chakra. A gasp drew his attention away from the shuriken. He looked up to see Hinata staring at him with her Byakugan active. She looked shocked. At first he was confused until he looked around to notice that the grass around him had turned brown and small fur had started up. Looking to Hinata again, he noticed a shimmer in the air showing heat waves slowly drifting off of him. He stood up and walked to the water to see if he was burned at all, but when he got close the water started to bubble and boil, causing a thick curtain of steam to rise up. That's when Naruto realized his chakra was still flowing out of him. He closed his eyes and gradually the pull faded until he was certain that no more chakra was leaking out. He looked back to Hinata to see the shocked look still on her face. He scratched the back of his neck and laughed to ease the tension. Hey, seems I got a bit out of hand with my Kaden training, huh, Hinata-chan? He commented offhandedly. Hinata just nodded before asking. What were you doing anyway, Naruto-kun? He just continued to scratch the back of his neck before explaining how he was trying to make her a gift. He then showed her the leaf he had made. She took the leaf and put it in her pocket. But Hinata, that's not good enough for a first gift in a relationship. Naruto protested, a fierce blush spreading over both of their faces. Naruto-kun, anything made by you would be the best gift I could ever receive. She said without stuttering once, although neither of their blushes decreased. So Hinata-chan, what was it that made you look so shocked? Questioned Naruto, changing the subject to get rid of his blush. Hinata thought for a second before replying. I think we should tell Kurenai-sensei, so I'll explain what I saw to both of you at the same time. Naruto just shrugged before the two went off to find their sensei. Kurenai was enjoying her book when she glanced down to have a quick check on her students. When she saw Hinata and Naruto coming towards her, she hid her book in her kunai pouch and jumped down to greet them. Why are you coming back here? Want some training in genjutsu? Questioned Kurenai. Her students shook their heads before Hinata stepped forward, a slight blush still present on her face. Kurenai figured it was from standing next to Naruto. Well, Kurenai-sensei, while Naruto-kun and I were training, he tried to use fire and wind at the same time to speed up an exercise. He seemed to be having trouble with it. When I looked over to him, he was surrounded by dead grass and small fires. I activated my Byakugan and saw that his chakra was acting strangely. The only way I can think to explain it would be to use an image. Said Hinata before continuing, I saw two different elemental chakras running through Naruto, one wind and one fire. They started side by side, the Fuden chakra was white and the Kaden was red. But every time they pass as a tenketsu, the amount of red and white would decrease, but a new color was added. It was a sort of orangey yellow. This new chakra was then being expelled around him in a bubble, creating heat waves and fire. The chakras were like food dyes in a river, following the current until they reach something to mix them like a whirlpool. The colors are dragged into the whirlpool and mix in the middle before being pushed out as a new color. Naruto looked thoughtful for a minute before he clapped his hands. I know what it is. The whirlpool comment made everything fit. I accidentally used the Uzumaki bloodline. Stated Naruto like it was obvious. The two women were confused. Anyo, Naruto-kun, I thought your bloodline was your speed and teleportation. Asked Hinata. No, that's my father's clan. I can't tell you his clan name. It's a secret. The bloodline you saw was my mother's clan, the Uzumaki. It allows me to mix together different elements to form new sub-elements. Gigi understands it better than I do. Naruto said before reaching into his coat to pull out a scroll with a whirlpool design on it. Hang on a second while I figure out what I did. He said as he unrolled the scroll to reveal a picture showing the kanji for all 5 main elements in a circle. Naruto channeled chakra to his fingertip before touching the kanji for fire and wind. In the center of the circle, the kanji for scorch appeared, as well as some information. Scorch release, an extinct bloodline from Suna, can create incredible heat in an area or focused to a point. When focused to a point, this bloodline can melt through any material. Read Naruto out loud. Sounds cool. I'll have to mess around with this when we get back to Konoha. Kurenai and Hinata were shocked that he would brush off something like this. Come on, Hinata-chan, let's get back to training. I'll see if I can get it right this time. Said Naruto with a smile which caused Hinata to blush slightly and walk back with him. Later that day, at the end of the day, Team 8 and Tazuna arrived back at Tazuna's house to find Team 7 all exhausted from their training. Shortly after walking in the door, Tsunami called out from the kitchen. Dinner's ready, come and get it. Everyone got up and went to the dining area, Inari included. Throughout the meal, Inari would glare at the ninja. That's it. Why don't you just quit? You'll all die. Why you train just so you can walk to your deaths against Gato? I hate people like you, raised in your big village, you know nothing of our suffering. We have been through hell and you people act like you know us. I bet you haven't even, Inari said before Naruto cut in. Will you shut up, you annoying little Gaki? You grew up with family. You have food. You have never been beaten by most of the population of your village. You have never known my suffering. Naruto almost growled this out as his features became more feral. I'll be out training sensei. And with that Naruto disappeared in a red flash. Kakashi's jaw hit the floor, which is quite entertaining with the mask remaining on. That wa was sensei's bloodline. Kakashi thought in shock. But sensei's son died. I thought Naruto was named after Kushina in her honor. But that was definitely his bloodline. Meanwhile, Inari ran from the room crying. He sprinted up the stairs to his room, Kurenai following him to try and help him through the confusion he was feeling. Sensei, why did Naruto lie to Inari? Surely his life wasn't like that. Questioned Sakura, snapping Kakashi out of his thought. He did lie. Kakashi started making the people in the room relax. His life was much worse than what he suggested. Naruto grew up with no one to help him. He had to scrounge through trash to get food and hide whenever a villager saw him, or they would chase him away or attack him. I know this because I used to be an Anbu captain and I would have to save him from mobs of villagers, especially on his birthday. The people in the room all had varying reactions. Sasuke looked surprised, or at least as surprised he could while retaining an impassive look. Kiba and Sakura looked a little green. Tazuna and Tsunami were almost in tears, and the remaining members of Team H showed no outward reaction. They both knew already. With Naruto out on a small clearing, Naruto appeared in a flash of red. This was where he had killed the thugs and was the first place he could remember perfectly that was within his range. The only evidence of his fight was a scorch mark on the ground where the bodies had been and a few red stains on the nearby trees. Naruto, still annoyed, reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a scroll with the kanji for seal on the front. He threw his coat over a branch and prepared the scroll. When he unrolled it, he applied chakra and several small paper slips. An ink well and a calligraphy brush popped out in a puff of smoke. He started to draw on the slips, his hand a blur as he drew out 10 identical ceiling arrays. Once done, he attached them to several trees, and sat in the middle of the clearing in the lotus position. He concentrated on the area around him until one seal glowed and he vanished in a flash. When he appeared, he was sitting below the seal. He smirked before standing up and starting to flash around the clearing. The next morning, Haku was walking through the forest collecting herbs to help Zabuza heal faster. As he was walking, he came upon a blonde-haired boy asleep in a clearing. Upon closer inspection, revealed a Konoha Hitai around his neck. He wasn't one of the ninja that had attacked Zabuza, meaning that reinforcements had been called in. He walked into the clearing and reached for the boy's throat. He didn't like to kill, but to protect Zabuza he would do anything. As he was about to kill the boy, he instead shook the boy awake. Huh? Where am I? Oh, right, training. Naruto said sleepily. Who are you? Naruto questioned. Isn't it polite to give your own name first? Asked Haku teasingly. Naruto smiled brightly. So it is, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, genin of Konohagakure no Sato, and you are? I'm Haku, he said while smiling. Why are you out here in the forest so early, Haku? Naruto questioned, already knowing that this person, he wasn't entirely sure of gender yet, was a ninja based on their chakra levels. I'm collecting herbs for a friend of mine so he will get better quicker. Haku said, trying to word it so he wouldn't reveal anything. Why are you out here, Naruto-kun? I was training. I gotta get stronger so I can help the people here and protect my precious people while I'm at it. Naruto stated with conviction. Then you will grow strong. Those who protect people close to them will always grow stronger so they can protect their precious ones to the fullest. Haku said. Naruto smiled before he helped Haku look for herbs. When they were done, Haku started walking away. Tell Zabuza I'm sorry, it has to be this way. Haku spun around with a Senbon out but found Naruto already gone. He looked around searching for Naruto before sprinting off. Naruto reappeared in a red flash before collecting the sealing tags from the trees and before putting them in his kunai pouch for later. This was the first time he had gotten the seal right, so he going to save these for later examination. When he arrived back at the house, he found out that his team had already left to guard Tazuna. Kurenai had left him a note telling him to stay here and train whilst guarding Tsunami so that Kakashi didn't have to watch the house and his team at the same time. He shrugged before creating a dozen clones and sending them to surround the house. Once he was done with his clones, he went and sat by the pier that was near Tazuna's house. He took a deep breath before pulling out one of his broken shuriken. He superheated it before shaping it into a kunai. He left a narrow tube inside the kunai, and while it was still hot he placed one of the seal tags inside and reheated the metal to cover the hole before cooling it again. Once he was sure it wouldn't break, he created another clone with a lot more chakra than he usually gave them. He gave the clone some money. The clone nodded to him before concentrating and disappearing in a red flash. If we were to follow the journey of the clone, we would see it flash to several locations along the road to Konoha, always teleporting to the range of its vision. Naruto looked to where the clone went before sitting down in the lotus position, focusing on his Kaden chakra. He built up Kaden chakra into his palm before small sparks started to flicker around his fingers. He kept building the chakra until flames were resting above each finger. He concentrated and made the flames move slowly around the fingers, spiraling into his palm. Once in his palm, the flames spread outward, coating his entire hand without burning it. He smirked before charging forward and slammed his fist into a tree. At first all that was there was a scorch mark, but slowly the mark started to turn red before the entire tree started to burn from the inside. Oot! Slowly the tree collapsed in on itself, turning into a pile of burning splinters. That night, when Team 8 returned from the bridge, Naruto greeted them at the door. "Hey guys, what took you so long?" His team just looked at him before walking off to different parts of the house to pursue their own personal interests. Hinata and Naruto went outside and sat on the roof. Hinata couldn't figure out why Naruto seemed to be fidgeting and blushing. She figured it out when he pulled out a necklace. It was a small kunai on a silver chain. "I made it today while training. I sent a clone to get the chain from home. It's a beacon. If you channel chakra into it when you're in danger, I'll be there in a flash," Naruto explained. Hinata clutched it to her chest before putting it around her neck. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she said as she leant over and kissed him on the cheek. He blushed and leant back until he was lying down on the roof. Hinata joined him, laying her head on his chest. End of the week. Naruto woke up and looked around. His team was gone, and judging by the lack of shinobi-sized chakra signatures nearby, he guessed that Team 7 was gone too. He shrugged before pulling on his gear. Crash! Naruto jumped and pushed his chakra into the air around him. He was feeling for people near him who didn't possess enough chakra to track by shinobi standards. He immediately recognized Tsunami and Inari, but there were two unknown people in the other room. Concentrating for a second, he found one of the sealing tags he had placed around the house. Sending out some chakra to activate the beacon in the seal. Once activated, he felt the pull at his chakra, signifying that the way was clear for him to teleport. As one of the thugs was going to slice Inari with his sword, he was blocked by a katana that had appeared in a flash of red. His vision cleared to reveal Naruto holding back his larger sword with only one hand on his katana. He yawned before a second katana shot out of his other sleeve and sliced the thug's ankles, causing him to fall to the floor howling in pain. He turned to see the other thug holding his sword to Tsunami's throat. Take one step and I slash her throat," he called out. Naruto just smirked before vanishing in a flash, appearing behind the man and hitting him over the back of the head with the pommel of his sword. The man collapsed and Naruto created 3 clones, 2 to drag the thugs outside and tie them up and 1 to guard Tsunami and Inari. He nodded to them before racing off towards the bridge, his swords already back in their seals. At the bridge, Teams 7 and 8 minus Naruto had just arrived at the bridge to discover a thick mist had covered the area. All of Tazuna's remaining workers were either knocked out or dead, they couldn't be sure yet. Haha, it seems the famous Sharingan Kakashi couldn't handle me alone, he had to call for reinforcements. Taunted Zabuza from within the mist, look, one of your genin is even shaking in fear, how pathetic. At this 10 water clones appeared from the mist. You're mistaken, I'm not shaking in fear, I'm shaking in excitement. Called Sasuke as he dispelled the clones in a blur of motion. Seems this one might be a match for you in speed, Haku. Zabuza commented. Hinata and Kurenai giggle a bit at this but hid it from Zabuza. The mist cleared to reveal Zabuza, Haku and the demon brothers. Sasuke take the hunter Nin. Kiba, Shino attack the demon brothers. Hinata and Sakura guard Tazuna. Kurenai, you and I are going to take down a demon. Instructed Kakashi, becoming suddenly serious. The various battles raged for a few minutes. Kiba and Shino were at a stalemate with the demon brothers. Shino couldn't get his beetles close enough because of their Tei. Work and Kiba and Akamaru could only just follow them by scent, but the mist was making it difficult. Kakashi and Kurenai were having a hard time. With all the mist, Kakashi's Sharingan was almost useless and Kurenai couldn't get a lock for her Genjutsu. They were barely dodging Zabuza's giant blade. Sasuke was doing the worst. He was trapped inside a dome of ice mirrors and riddled with Senbon, his Sharingan blazing but ultimately not helping. Hinata was watching all this with her Byakugan when she noticed a chakra signature getting closer. She focused her eyes to see Naruto racing over at his fastest speed without teleporting. She knew he wouldn't make it in time to help Sasuke. That's when she remembered the necklace. She grabbed it and channeled chakra to it. In an instant Naruto appeared in a red flash. He surveyed the battles before turning and giving Hinata a quick kiss on the cheek before placing a seal tag on the ground. He looked into the dome to see Sasuke collapse. He quickly flashed over and grabbed Sasuke before flashing out again and depositing him with Sakura. When he stood up straight, he felt a little woozy. He had used a lot more chakra than normal thanks to holding Sasuke. But still he charged into the dome anyway to defeat the masked Nin. He knew it was Haku but he wouldn't call him out just yet. You are a fool, rushing into your own demise like that. You should have run when you had the chance. Once I start attacking you will have no chance of escape. Came Haku's voice from all around. Naruto just smirked before lazily watching the Senbon come flying at him from all directions. With a flick of his wrist his sword shot out, enhanced with Fuden chakra, it blew all the Senbon away from him. I'll admit, with your bloodline you're fast, but sadly, called Naruto as he disappeared mid-sentence. He appeared above Haku while she was moving between mirrors. I'm faster, Haku. And with a quick swing of his sword Haku was sent crashing to the ground. He had made a mirror encase his chest to prevent damage. When he was getting up he saw that the mirror was almost cut all the way through. How did you know it was me? Questioned Haku as he struggled to stand. Please, how many people have a chakra signature as unique as your own? Your chakra is cool like your ice, but comforting. That makes this so much harder. With his part said, Naruto charged again, his sword ready to sever Haku's head. Hyouten, frozen blade, called Haku as a blade of ice formed around his hand. He barely blocked in time but he could see the ice wouldn't last. Naruto frowned for a second before he began to expel chakra. At first nothing happened until Haku noticed that the ice mirrors that were still up were starting to melt. Sorry, I'm new to this whole Shikuden thing. Scorch is difficult to use on purpose and even harder to restrict to a small area like your ice. Haku was shocked that he was melting her ice, including her blade. With a quick strike from the blonde her blade shattered, the force knocking her to the ground. End it, Naruto, I am a broken tool. Haku's voice was filled with sorrow. Naruto raised his sword ready to knock Haku out when a loud chirping sound filled the bridge. The mist had cleared significantly since the start of the fights, revealing Zabuza standing still in a sort of daze and Kakashi charging at him with lightning coating his hand. Sorry Naruto-kun, but it seems I may have a use yet, said Haku as she struck a Senbon into Naruto's stomach, causing him to stumble. Haku took off to intercept Kakashi. Naruto tried to follow but found his chakra not responding. He pulled out the Senbon that Haku had struck him with and his chakra started to flow again, but it was too late. Haku was already dying, a hole where his heart used to be. Zabuza looked down at Haku and for a second a tear started to build in his eye. Well, it seems the demon of the bloody mist isn't all he's cracked up to be. Oh well, I wasn't going to pay him anyway. Men kill them all, came the voice of Gato. Everyone looked to see Gato and an army of thugs standing on the bridge. Zabuza looked at the thugs before turning to Kakashi and Kurenai. Gato is mine, you two take out the thugs. And with that he charged forward, his cleaver leaving behind a pile of bodies and severed limbs in its wake. With him were the demon brothers who were taking down anyone stupid enough to attack Zabuza from behind. Kurenai and Kakashi both charged in as well and were soon joined by Naruto, who was nothing but a blur as he took down thugs left and right. They made quick work of the thugs who weren't taken down by the Mist Nin. When Zabuza reached Gato, the little man was shaking in his boots. Even though Zabuza had wounds covering his back and could barely lift his sword as the demon brothers had fallen a little while ago. Zabuza, using the last of his strength, swung his sword downwards, cleaving the man in two. Using his sword as a cane, he slowly walked to the demon brothers before grabbing what was left of them and dragged them over to Haku's body. When he got there, he collapsed. I'm so sorry, Haku, but I know I won't see you again. I hope you're happy up there. And with that, the light left Zabuza's eyes. The last thing he saw was Haku's smiling face and snowflakes falling all over the battlefield.